Hey guys, Drift Panda here. Just thought I'd give everyone a quick look over the front suspension that I've made up for the Drift Gemini. So I've got it sitting at ride height at the moment, roughly. No springs in there, just so I can show you through how it all works. Alright, so one thing you're going to have to watch out for is scrub radius with the guards. This is okay, but it's quite close. So back here on the firewall, it clears, but not by much. I haven't flipped my upper arms. I've left that all standard, which is a popular caster mod for these things. I left that standard partially because I don't feel a need for more caster personally, but also because flipping the upper arms will reduce that clearance in there, and there's not a lot to play with. I decided to go the whole 9 yards, shall we say, on the lower control arms. I'm really wanting to push and see how much clearance I can get out of this front suspension. As you can see, it's not currently using it, so I haven't put any big lock spaces or anything yet. It's only 4mm slip-ons at the moment. Once I do crank up a little bit more steering lock, it'll be interesting to see how much it can take. I have had to relocate the brake lines. So you notice there is a whole lot of nothing back there where the brake lines used to be, and that's because the wheel was hitting it. So that was obviously a pretty major issue. I have relocated the brake lines to the front of the control arm. I've welded some brackets on there. So brake line reroute here, goes up and under. They are quite long braided lines, and I've added a loop there intentionally to allow them to flex a little bit more. They're fairly stiff, these things, so it's best to give them some room to move and bend. I found that without that bend there, they were forcing themselves into the brake disc at certain steering angles, so by adding the loop, as much as it might look a bit precarious, it's quite firm, it actually keeps it away from the brake disc. I'd like to look at adding a backing plate to the brakes. Because these are aftermarket, the standard ones won't fit, but just something simple as an extra security measure through here would be nice. Another point to be wary of, the upper arm and the actual wheel itself on full droop, full lock gets quite close. In there I have actually done a little cut and shut of the upper arm. If we look at the front, essentially just trimming that lip here and adding some structure on the inside instead to improve clearance. It's only about maybe 10 mils difference, but it's all it needs. Okay, so roughly ride height again here. Got the wheel off and you can have a quick look at how it all goes together. As you can see, significant fabrication around here to improve clearance for the wheel, which goes hand in hand with the brake lines being relocated up here. There's the trim on the upper lip for rim clearance at full droop. I've got some different bunt stops in there, that's just because mine were knackered. I couldn't get any new ones. Caliper clearance is now quite generous. Even with extra lock, I don't think it's going to get anywhere near it. One thing I will say is, although I've really put a lot of emphasis on notching and reshaping the lower arm for clearance, once it was extended, there was a lot more clearance straight away. So I've only done a 12mm extension on this one. I would probably lean towards 15 being a good number, but not more. If you start going more, you'll see other clearance issues coming into play, as well as having a lot of camber forced on you. So I'm only running 4mm spacers at the moment on the steering rack to add a bit of lock, and you can see that the tie rod end is already getting quite close. So if you add a lot of extra lock, that will become more of an issue, and if I do that, I might need to add some kind of a follower for this brake line to keep it out of the way as well. It's difficult to gain a perspective of it, but if you were to extend the control arms further than this, you find that this goes that way, and in so doing it will get quite close to your sway bar linkage. So again, this is 12 mils and it's a fairly happy sort of place. 15 will be alright too, but beyond that we'll start making life more difficult with the sway bar linkage. So there we go. Custom lower control arms and a minor cut and shut on the upper arm, and it's got a lot of clearance in a lot of directions all through the suspension range. The next step will be to give these a test drive with the existing steering lock, just with the 4mm rack spacers on there. I just want to make sure that they feel right and drive straight and strong enough. And if I'm happy with that, I'll get some bigger rack spacers and start winding in some more steering lock. So watch this space. Cheers.